Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, I am the head of distribution for Hyatt Hotels globally. However, this afternoon I'm here in my capacity as a distribution expert because most hotels and most people in the room do not work for a large chain, do not have the facilities that a large chain has, and have to pretty much figure it out on their own. I used to work for independent hotels for a long time. That was most of my career before I moved into chains. So I understand what it's like. I understand what it's like to have an owner that's very close to their property and for whom it is sometimes a family heirloom. It's something that they're incredibly proud of. And so the pressures that are put on you by third parties and other elements of our industry are very, very tough to deal with. So whether you're working for an independent hotel or you're working for a chain hotel, what I'm going to talk to you today is about third parties and how to make the most of it. And this might seem a little bit strange because we're at a direct booking summit and I'm going to tell you how to use third parties. But for too long now, and especially in my role, we have been talking about OTAs, wholesalers, all of these third parties that are just there to steal our direct business. This can be true, but it also couldn't be further from the truth. There are certain pockets of business that are out there, and if you were to spend the money to try and get it on your own, you would never make a return on investment. So sometimes it's really important to look at third parties. And that's what we're going to talk about, and hopefully I'll give you some tips that you can use as soon as you go back to your hotels. Here's how we're going to go about it. We're going to talk about value and understanding the value of each of your third parties. We're going to talk terms and conditions. Now, this is a legal thing that we're going to do, and nobody likes to read contracts. Last time I did a session for this same conference, we talked about terms and conditions, we talked about legal clauses. Nobody likes them, nobody likes to read a 41-page contract. But sometimes it's really important to do it because there are traps in there, and there are some things that you can negotiate and some things that you can't. So it's important to know what the difference is between the two. I'm going to talk to you about incrementality versus cost. Everyone in this room thinks about cost first. We want to bring down the cost of our distribution. We want to make sure that our commissions are as low as possible. That's what our owners want. That's what's good for our bottom line. However, we should also focus on the value that those third parties bring and not just how much you have to pay them for what they're bringing you. And finally, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about owner relations. In my job, I have to talk to owners a lot, explain my decisions, explain my strategy, tell them why I've done what I've done, why is this costing me more money, why am I losing room nights. There always has to be a very solid explanation. And you'll find that most of the time when you speak to your owners and you've got a solid strategy with you, they're probably more willing to listen. So let's get started with a little exercise on valuation. I'm going to put an image up on the screen that is very dear to my heart because it is my favorite hobby, and that is horse riding. So this is something that I know very well. And if you're a passionate rider, and I've picked here Western riding rather than English saddle because it's a little bit easier to differentiate between saddles, but you'll see 3 saddles up there. And each one of them has a very different price. So, hands up in the room, people who think that the middle saddle is the most expensive saddle. Who thinks the middle one is most expensive? Got a couple of brave people over there. Who thinks that that one is the most expensive one? Most people think that. And then over there, who thinks that that one is the most expensive one? Oh, there's a glut in that corner over there that thinks that one is the most expensive one. How expensive exactly are they? Well, here's a couple of prices. Here are the actual prices of these saddles. If you are a horse rider, if you have a girlfriend, a wife, or a daughter who's a horse rider, make sure you have a solid bank, because this is how much it actually costs when you're going to equip yourself. So, here are the actual prices of these saddles. The majority of you were right. This one is this, and then the cheapest one is in the middle. For those of you, and that was most of you, who thought that that saddle was the most expensive one, give me one reason why you thought that was expensive. Just anybody. Handmade, detail. Exactly. So we understand that implicitly when we look at something. We can see whether it was handcrafted, whether more effort, more time was spent into putting together this saddle rather than this one or this one. The materials used are an important cost factor as well. So we understand that when we look at everyday items. We understand it when we look at clothing. We understand it when we look at furniture. When we compare a piece of furniture from IKEA versus a piece of furniture from an antique shop, we understand the value of one versus the other. And this is something that is really, really important in distribution as well. It's understanding the value. How much is each room night worth? How much effort are we going to put into a room night, and how much are we willing to pay for that effort? So what is valuable for your hotel? And this is not a generic explanation. This is your hotel, and think about your hotel specifically. Is it multiple guests in a room? Multiple guests in a room like this family means that they might be spending more at the hotel. More breakfast, more lunch, more services that they use. So is that important to you? Attracting that type of traveler that travels in little groups, is that important for you? Or is it important for you to bring travelers from all over the world? You don't want people coming from your backyard, you want them coming from everywhere around the world because that's how you want to fill your hotel. Is that important to you? Is how much they spend important? Not just on incremental services at your hotel, but also the ADR, the rate that they're willing to pay. Are they willing to book higher room categories? Are they willing to book suites? Are those guests important to you? How about long stay guests? Do you like them? Do you want people to stay longer so that you don't have to refill those rooms every single day? Do you want a base of people who are actually going to stay a little bit longer so you don't have to work as hard? Or do you like people who plan in advance? Do you like people who are looking forward to their holiday, and just to make sure that they get a room at your hotel, they've booked it in advance? So try to understand that. What are you trying to get? Which of these groups are you trying to get? Or are you trying to get all of them? And in which case, you need a strategy for all of them, and you probably need partners for all of them. So for that, I'm not going to tell you who your typical guest is. And you don't need to be part of a hotel chain to understand this. All of this is in your own data. It's in your own systems. So really important to look at that. Understand who your average guest is. Now, you need to look at several things to understand who your average guest is. Number one, how long in advance do they typically book your hotel? How long do they stay at your hotel? How much do they spend? And this is, again, your average guest. This is most of your guests. What day of week are they staying? So if you find out, and this is like doing Criminal Minds here and profiling your guests, if you find that most of your guests stay 1.4 nights, they come on a Tuesday, they leave on a Thursday, they spend on average 20 euros per night on top of their room night, and they book about 7 days in advance. If that is your average guest, then you must understand that that guest will know how to book you direct. They will find you. This is what most guests want, so they will find you. Anything that falls outside of that, people who book 3 months in advance, people who book 7 nights, people who spend a ton of money, that falls outside of your average. So that's harder to get. And when you're looking at valuation, it's important to remember that what's hard to get, what's hard to do, like that saddle, is worth more money. And it also costs more to get it. You can't expect to pay the same price for something that's hard to get than for something that is average to you. So this is what you need to do. Profile your average guest. How do most guests book on your website? And for that, you have a captive audience. Anything that falls out of that, try and find third parties. So we'll look at that. In order to do it, once you've profiled your guest, you're going to put together a little chessboard. So, let me explain how this one works. The bottom line here gives you your booking window. These are the guests that book a long time in advance. They're planning holidays, they have to attend a convention, they know that they have to travel, and they desperately want to stay at your hotel, so they're securing a room a long time in advance. 90 days plus. Here we're going 60 days, 1 month, 2 weeks, 7 days, 1 week before arrival, and up to day of arrival. The blue bars show the amount of bookings that you get on various booking windows. And the yellow bar shows you the rate that you're achieving. Now, these numbers are all made up, they're not live examples, but you should look at them for your hotel as well. Look at your booking window versus how many bookings come in at each part of the booking process, and what is your rate doing. So in this case, you can see that on the far left, we start off at $216. Then the rate goes down, it goes to $179, 2 weeks to 1 month before arrival. It goes back up to $210, 2 weeks to 1 week before arrival. 4 to 7 days before arrival, it dips to $150, and it ends up between 0 and 3 days, so day of arrival and 3 days before arrival, it ends up at $147. So that's how you're pacing at your hotel. There's one important conclusion to make of this. People who are booking in advance, who are planning their holidays, who really want to secure a room at your hotel, if you've got this pattern, what you're saying to them is, suckers, you've really paid the most to stay at the hotel. Thank you so much for planning in advance. Thank you for wanting to stay at my hotel. Thank you for building base for me, and I am definitely going to charge you the most. For those who waited until the last minute thinking, let me wait and see if I'm going to get a good deal, you reward them. You reward them with a good deal for not helping you plan, not helping you yield, and not helping you price accurately. You should never, ever see this pattern. If you see it at your hotel, fix it. There's another thing that's interesting to note, and what do you think is going on here? 4 to 7 days, the rate suddenly drops. Yeah. So, this is when your general manager panics. That's exactly what happens a week before arrival when your general manager has a meeting with his top-line team and goes, what the hell is going on? Where are my bookings? And you go back and you give a special price out there. Be very, very careful of this. Wholesalers love your general managers for doing this. Wholesalers love the fact that they know that 1 week before your general manager is going to get very nervous. And they hold on to the reservations. If you work on allocation with a release date, they're going to wait quietly. Because holiday makers are organized and they've booked out here. But wholesalers wait to try and make more margin. They try and make more money off you. That's what they do. They're not just there to help you fill your hotel. So if you're working on allocation with a release date, they will wait until that release date, and they know that you might panic right here and bring the price down. But all the reservations are already on the books. Most people have booked a long time ago if they're going on holidays. They've booked when they booked their flights. So all those reservations are already in their system. They're not in yours. They'll take the promotion, the discount that you've given them, and keep it for themselves. It will not go out to the guests. So what happens there is that at that point you put that discount out and suddenly all these reservations come in, and you've got this little spike at the last minute. Do you really think that wholesalers are taking that promotion 7 days before arrival and sending it out to the whole world to say, hey, there's a promotion at this one hotel, book it now? Never happens. One way to prove it, and you'll all know this, when you've had to issue a stop sale to a wholesaler and give them 24 hours, 48 hours to send you the bookings, suddenly, miraculously, all these bookings come in. It's because they're holding on to them. They're holding on until the release date. That's really bad for pricing. It's really bad for forecasting, and it's really bad for pricing. So let's look at another example. How about in your mix, you have an account that does this. This is one account, same rules as before, 90 days, etc. Sorry, get you back to the next one. Oops. It's not going anywhere. There it is. This account, you have 40% of their bookings that come in more than 90 days before arrival. It goes down gradually, and finally, 0 to 3 days before arrival, you have virtually nothing. Your rate starts quite high. You're trying to incentivize bookings. Your rate's going down, not dramatically, but no bookings are coming in. In your opinion, who thinks that this is a good account to have? One brave person over there. You are 100% right. In your mix, you definitely need accounts like this. You need an account in there that is going to book a long time in advance and pay the rate that you've given them. That even if you give them a cheaper rate, they're like, sorry, but my guests book in advance. We don't care about your discounts. Everyone's already booked. So you're good. These guys help you build base. Alternatively, what about an account like this? So they're not sending you anything a long time in advance, so they're not building base. However, at the last minute, they've sent you 41% of their reservations. Again, in your opinion, who thinks that this is a good account? One person over there, one person over here. This would be a fantastic account if the rate line went the other way. If it started low and it went really high, and this account helped you with last-minute business, you have to make sure that the rate is high. And for that, you need to make sure that you've built your distribution across your booking window. That you have accounts that produce here, and accounts that produce here, and accounts that produce there. And then at the last minute, if you're really in trouble because you've got a group cancellation or something, you've got a couple of accounts over there that can help you. But the rate needs to be high. You can't have an account booking at the last minute or holding on to reservations just because they know that you're going to lower the rate. So, what do you need to do? You need to look at how your accounts book. You need to make sure that you put them on a timeline. You've got 5 accounts over there, you've got 10 accounts over there, you've got 7 accounts over here, and that's what you need. Why? Because if those accounts don't produce, for whatever reason, something happens and they don't produce, you can still do something about it. And you can activate these accounts. If they don't produce, you can still do something about it and activate these accounts. If everybody produces over here, you can't forecast and you can't price. You need to have them evenly spread out. And that's also the reason why, if they're evenly spread out and you send out a promotion 2 weeks before, it'll only affect these guys, and it should only affect these guys. These guys are good. They've given you what they needed. But it does help you build your pricing accordingly. So, how does it look? Well, in this quadrant, you have your long-haul guests. People who are coming in from, if you're based in Europe, if they're coming in from the US, if they're coming in from Asia, if they're coming in from wherever, Australia, anyone that books a long time in advance should be here. If you're seeing that those nationalities are coming in here, it means somebody's holding on to reservations. People who are flying long haul, unless they're business travelers, don't book at the last minute. So over here, you've got your long-haul guests, your leisure guests, people planning vacations. When you've got a family, you can't wait until the last minute. And you've got your convention guests, because they want to be sure that they're staying at the hotel or at least in the city where it's happening. Over here is your top 3 geo-sources for your hotels. These are the guests where you do most of your sales activities. You send salespeople on the road, you do a lot of marketing. These are your top geo sources. That's when they book, because they've got a lot more exposure to your hotel. This is also your key accounts, your corporates, etc., where they might have last room availability in their contracts. They are assured that they will always get a room at a very defined rate at your hotel. So they will book in this quadrant. And local businesses who don't need to travel, they will book in this quadrant. So that's how you start to piece it together. Next is your channels. Over here, you've got the channels that need to plan in advance. You have tour operators, travel agents. This is mostly leisure business. You've got some repeat guests, people who stayed with you last year or the year before and they had such a wonderful time, want to make sure that they have space at your hotel. So they're going to plan ahead. They are sitting over here. So when you've got repeat guests, talk to them. We heard about CRM this morning. Talk to your guests. Over here, your channels are typically going to be the GDS, the OTAs, your website, your call center if you have one, or Hotels Direct. That's the main channels that are going to book in this quadrant. So do that little exercise, check who is booking when, to make sure that when you give out promotions or if you do any pricing, it's adapted to the channel where they book. If you're going to do a really special price for Booking.com, don't bother too much over here. Use them over there. So don't put it in too far in advance, you're not going to get it. On the Expedia package path, you might get it. On Booking.com, it's more skewed to the last minute, but again, look at your own numbers to make sure that I'm not talking out of the side of my mouth. So your rates, what do you do with your rates? Well, I'm not going to teach you that because there are revenue managers in the room who know what to do, but this is when you should have your early bird rates, your non-refundable rates. All of those special promotions should be to build base. That's where they are. Even your opaque rates, because those are usually the cheapest ones, Hotwire, Priceline, opaque, they should be out there. Now, I know that it is a strategy to wait until the last minute, and if nothing comes in, you turn on opaque, but try and turn it on a little bit sooner and see what happens, so that here, you don't have to dump the rate. Here, you focus on your business travelers, your corporate accounts, making sure that there is the availability for them if you want them. You make sure that your small businesses who don't have negotiated rates understand where your hotel is and that sort of thing if you're not a resort property. And these are your last minute guests, people who are coming for the weekend. So you can have promos for the weekend at the last minute, but they should be non-refundable. And you should make sure that most of this that comes at a discount is non-refundable, because otherwise what you'll have is, there are many tools to teach people how to do this, you'll have cancel, rebook. So putting it together on a chessboard, this is what you do. Where are my guests coming from? Place them on your timeline. These are your European guests if you're based in Europe. These are the accounts that produce, so make sure that you do that as well. And that will leave you with where you need help. If you're missing accounts in any of the quadrants, that's where you need help. Now, I would say that day of arrival and very last minute, don't touch it. That should be for your channels, for direct bookings. Here is your opportunity. And your opportunity might be there or it might be there, but find the gaps. So from your data, find the gaps. What's really important when you do that and you find the partners or a group of partners is what can you negotiate? What terms and conditions can you negotiate? Very important. You have your goals. Your goals is to fill your hotel and make more money. They have their goals. And if you don't understand what their goals are, you're probably not going to negotiate properly. So what is negotiable? And not everything is. And here I'm going to tell you a little bit about quarterly earnings. Expedia, Booking.com, most of the OTAs are public companies. They live by the quarter. If they show negative results within a quarter, their shareholders lose money. So it's really important for them that their share price remains high. For their share price to remain high, they have to make a lot of money, which means they have to get it from you. That's the only way that they make money. So you have to understand that. And when you go and negotiate a contract, whether you're a chain or an independent hotel, and you say, I want to bring down my commissions, understand that they will never agree to make less money than they did before. They can't do that. That is the number one rule of business, is you do not goal yourself to make less money. So, if you're going to negotiate lower commissions and lower margins, you're going to have to give something in exchange. You can't reduce commissions and margins at all costs. You have to understand what those costs are. So, what is it worth to you? Are you willing to give them last room availability in exchange for 1% commission? This is all fictitious, but think about it. Are you willing to give them, to not give them price parity, but give them 3% more? Are you willing to tell them, please target you onward distribution, we only want you to distribute to these partners, and for that we'll give you 0.5% or less. We'll give you marketing dollars. In exchange for 1% commission, I'll give you 3 million in marketing money. Is that worth it? You want to send us business travelers, we want to keep that for ourselves, so we'll give you 1% more. Or, I'm happy to give you all of my business travel, but you have to bring down my commissions. All of this is negotiable, but comes at a cost, and you have to remember that. They are not just going to bring down commissions, they're going to ask for something in exchange. So how does that tie into your owners? Very easy. What are owners about? What do they want? It boils down to very few things. This is what owners want. They want more business, they want higher rates, they want less costs, and they want you to protect their asset. That's what they want. If you can get that right, you're great. Now, can you do that for them? Can you bring down the cost of your distribution, bring up their rates, protect the asset, and bring them more business? This is when you have to think about long-term versus short-term. If you give away something in your terms and conditions, and you say, for example, yes, I will let you do all of the business travel on my behalf, how much will that cost in the long run? How much more will it cost you to get that business back directly if you change directions in a few years? For those of you who have been in the business for a long time, you might remember that a few years ago, Expedia offered two margins, whether you gave them LRA or NLRA. NLRA was more expensive. You paid 1%, 2% more in margin if you didn't give them last room availability. Think about that. Every time you give away something that's valuable to you, you'll pay less in commission, but they will produce more. So in the end, you won't save anything. You have to figure out, in terms of direct business, what is that average guest? How do you protect that average guest of yours so that somebody doesn't steal them from you? And how do you negotiate your terms? And sometimes it might cost you more, but costing you more to get you something that is hard for you to get is not necessarily a bad thing. So playing the long game, it's very important. Two things that you need to remember from this. Number one, get back control of your inventory. If you have let your clauses decide what a third party can do within your inventory, if you have let them decide this is how they can sell your rooms and you have no control over it, renegotiate that, even if you have to pay a little bit more. And finally, control your costs. But you can only control your costs if you've controlled your distribution. You cannot do both at once. So if you're renegotiating, choose what you want. Less cost, more control. You can't get both. So when you're an independent hotel, you have to do this on your own. Unfortunately for you, if you're a chain hotel, you have to depend on people like me to do this. And you better hope that that's a really good negotiator that you've got with you, because they have to make sure that the hotels are full, that we haven't given away too much, and that we've kept the costs down. So you can do it for yourself. I encourage you to do the little chessboard and find out what it is that you already have, and then figure out who you need to fill the rest, and pay them for it. There is value in that saddle, there's value in third-party business. And that is what I'm going to leave you with. So thank you very much for your attention.
Right. Have you got time for a couple of questions? There we go. I told you, this is the only person who ever gets me so excited about contracts. Right, do we have any questions from the floor? Just stick your hand up. Right, one gentleman over there.
I would like to ask you to put your independent hat on again, independent hotel hat on again. How do you perceive the Genius deals and the likes from the other OTAs?
Yeah. So there's one thing there, and this, I'm going to be very, very clear about it. For chain hotels, Genius and these deals with the OTAs that feed their loyalty are an absolute no-no because chains have their own loyalty program. Independent hotels, you don't necessarily have that, so you have to count on the loyalty to the third party. Now, I would always advocate for loyalty that comes in another form, whether it's points, so Expedia does points, Orbitz does points. I would always advocate for an independent hotel to go for a points loyalty program rather than a discount. Discounts don't breed loyalty. Discounts mean that somebody is searching for a cheaper rate. It doesn't mean that they like your hotel. It means that they wanted a good deal, and once they've looked at Genius, what they're going to do is go back to Meta and see if they can get even cheaper than that. Because the signal is, if there's a cheaper rate there, there must be a cheaper rate somewhere else. So that is my opinion. It's only my opinion, but this is from looking at independent versus chain. I just think leading with discounts is not the way to gain loyalty. So I would always go for a point scheme rather than that.
One more here.
Hi, I have a question about the booking window and accounts. Is it different if there's high demand or low demand?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned, for example, 0 to 3 days, you should only do direct. But if there's no demand, maybe you want to win all the because Booking.com is booking last minute, and you want to maybe get the last minute bookers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can go into so much detail with this analysis. If you're a resort, you do seasonal booking windows. If your low season is your weekends, then you really look at the booking windows for your weekends. Look at where you need help and look at the booking window for that period. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay. Any more? Excellent. Thank you very much, Genevieve.
Thank you.